Okay, so yeah, really, really warm welcome. So as I was saying, my name's Garavavati, and tonight I'm going to be talking about the meaning of relationships. And the format of the evening is the same format that we've been doing, for quite a while now, but you might be joining us for the first time. But I'm going to talk a little bit about, the meaning of relationships in terms of a Buddhist context. And then we'll meditate together. We're going to practice the Metta, the loving kindness meditation this evening. And then there'll be a chance to ask questions. So if any questions arise as I'm talking, or if something arises in the meditation practice, you can sort of park it and then you can ask through the chat at the end of the class. So at around 7:45, we're going to open up for questions. So you can write those in the chat at the end. And we'll finish at 8:00. Okay, so this evening, this week we've been talking about the meaning of different things. Jana Varcha earlier was talking about the meaning of meaning, which is great, isn't it? So you can tune into that talk if you missed it, the meaning of meaning. And tonight I'm going to talk about the meaning of relationships. And it's a really interesting topic actually for myself to reflect on. And I live in a women's Buddhist community, and I live with 11 other people. And I work at the Buddha Center as well. So at the moment, the Buddha Center is closed, but we're doing these online offerings. So while I'm in relationship with all of you guys online, but in my life, I'm in a lot of different relationships. And I'm sure it'll be the same for you. We're relational beings. Even if we don't come into contact, especially during lockdown, with many people directly, we are in relationship with people all the time. And in the practice of Buddhism, relationships are really, really, really vital. Friendship is really, really, really important. And the reason for that, there's lots of reasons for that. One of the reasons is that it's a real opportunity where we get to grow. We can really, really grow through the cultivation of friendship and through the experience of being in relationship with other people and looking more deeply into the nature of that and sort of committing actually to relationships. So one of the reasons why relationships help us to grow is because they give us the opportunity to step out of self-absorption from sort of a narrow sphere of concern of ourselves, and they get us to step into connection with other people. And through that, we can then connect to life. And if we look more deeply into that, we can really connect into the meaning of life, the true sort of nature of our experience. And I'll say a bit more about that. So I'm going to talk about a loving kindness and how that feeds into relationships. It's really nice because Claudio and Max are both nodding. Everything I say is very, very encouraging. So I'm going to talk about loving kindness. And I think most of you maybe tuning in will have practiced this loving kindness meditation. Some of you might not have done. It's a really beautiful and profound practice. And in that practice, we see if we can cultivate love. It's metta, loving kindness for ourselves, a good friend, someone we don't really know or have strong feelings for, someone we're in difficulty with, and then we expand that out to all beings. And the word metta comes from the word mita or mitra, which means friend. So the sort of kernel of metta, of loving kindness, is friendliness. And this metta, it's sort of boundless in its reach. When it's at its full capacity, it's limitless and it's boundless, and it sort of radiates on all beings, regardless of sort of who they are and what they've done and where they are. So it's a really lofty ideal, actually, to try and cultivate this sense of universal loving kindness. And as just as human beings, but if you're a Buddhist practitioner, you might have that aspiration, or you might value kindness. So it has this boundless reach, but the seeds of it are just in everyday, ordinary human friendliness. And the way that where we experience that is in our relationships, directly in our relationships. So it's a sort of down-to-earth care and concern, and not just for the people that are nearest and dearest to us, but for all beings, for all life. And there's this lovely image of sort of our experience being a bit like a sort of satellite. So it's like we ourselves have a fixed sense of ourselves, and we try to go out to others, and it takes us away from the orbit of ourselves, and we sort of start, going out beyond ourselves. But quite quickly, we can just become self-referential and come back to ourselves. So the practice of metta takes us out, sort of beyond the sort of palace of ourselves, out to other people. And the reason that we want to do that is because it's painful, actually, to be completely self-absorbed. And it's also, it's from a Buddhist perspective, it's deluded. So the way that we can experience that self-absorption is to be constantly thinking in lots of different situations, or in our friendships and our relationships, what do people think about me? What's in this for me? Or what about me? And if you look at your life and the things that you do, and at the different relationships that you have in your life, see how you relate to the people in your life. Do you relate to the people in your life on a basis of just wanting the best for them? Or do you relate to them on the basis of wanting something from them? Maybe it's a utilitarian mode of wanting something from someone, or just a sort of neurotic dependence on someone. And we all have those tendencies. So we will all be a bit neurotically dependent on the people that we love, or the people that don't love us. We'll all relate to people in a utilitarian way. We'll all do that. But what we're trying to really practice, and what the relationships, when we really take them seriously, can do, is they can be an opportunity to go beyond those modes of relating. So if we bring metta into our existing relationships, they help that sort of limiting, narrow, painful orbit around the self to just go a little bit wider and cycle a little bit wider. So when we practice the metta bhavana, we're seeing if we can sort of expand out beyond the narrow concern, sort of painful self-concern. And it's not that that's sort of like evil or wrong. It's sort of natural that we feel a sense of separation, and we feel isolated from other people, and we want to look after ourselves. We want to protect ourselves. It's just that, it's not really true. We are deeply, deeply connected to each other, and we do affect each other, and we can have a really positive effect on each other if we can go beyond our sort of self-absorption. And I'm not saying that you're all self-absorbed. I'm sure you all do lots and lots of things for other people. So I'm not assuming that you're operating from a place of self-absorption. It's there's something about really, really understanding that we're not fixed and separate. So when we cultivate metta in our relationships, and when we use our relationships as a way to go beyond self-concern, we start to see more deeply into the nature of ourselves, that we can have quite a limited, fixed idea of ourselves, that we're fixed, that we're separate. And when we practice the metta bhavana, we can go beyond that sense of that limited sense of self. And it's not that we don't exist, and it's not that we're sort of morphed into each other. I'm definitely over here in front of the camera, as we've established, and Claudio is over there, and Max is over there. So, we are sort of separate, but we're not as separate as we might think, and we are deeply, deeply connected to each other, and deeply, deeply connected to lots of things. Just this glass of water that I have on my little table here, the water is in the cup. So the water is sort of separate from me, and I drink the water, and now it becomes part of me. And then it will move through me, and it will move out into the London water treatment system. So where does the water end and I begin, and where do I end? And then, I don't know, maybe I don't need to go into all the details, but there's this sense that, well, hopefully you've got it. I don't know if I can say any more, really, that I'm not as fixed and separate as I think I am. And it's quite simple to understand it maybe with a glass of water. But when we sort of apply that to ourselves and to others and to our own desires and to others' desires, then something really exciting and something really interesting can open up. And if you've been practicing the Metta Bhavana for a while, you might have had the experience of having someone difficult in your life. You might have had the experience of a relationship being really painful, actually. And you put that person in the fourth stage of your Metta Bhavana, and you try to understand them. You try to see if you can have a sense of solidarity with them, that you're both human, that they want to be happy, that you want to be happy. You can see if you can go beyond your limited preferences and expand out and have a bigger perspective, something more human, and connect on that level. I've done that, tried to do that for myself, and it's really, really hard. But what I've noticed is that it's quite magical that actually something that felt so fixed and painful can magically transform. I say magic, it's not actually magic, it's conditionality, basically. I'm changing how I relate and how I think about that person and my relationship to that person. It directly affects that person, and then they change in relationship to that. So you might have had an experience of that, and if you haven't, then you've got an opportunity to practice the Metta Bhavana. And well, there's lots of opportunities actually online to learn that meditation more deeply. We'll have a go at it later this evening, but you can have an opportunity to learn that practice. It's a really deep, transformative practice, and it helps us to see into the nature of conditions, that we are each other's conditions, that we're not as fixed and separate as we think. And that when we go out to other people, when we bear other people in mind, when we reach out beyond what we want and what we don't want, and just turn our minds towards thinking about other people, trying to be kind, we learn something about ourselves. And it's in a way, it's like a cultivation of egolessness, which I always think sounds really, really like a really abstract idea. But actually, it's not a sort of it's not an abstract idea. It's a concrete thing that we can do, and it can manifest through our behavior and through this practice of going out to others. So in the first stage of the Metta Bhavana, we connect to a sense of self-cherishing. So we see how we care for ourselves, how we prioritize ourselves, how probably a lot of the time we're, concerned about ourselves. We're concerned for our own welfare. We look after ourselves, and that's a good thing. It's really positive. It's really important to have a positive sense of ourselves. So that's the first stage of the Metta Bhavana, but it's not an end in itself. That first stage of the Metta Bhavana is a springboard to the other stages. So we start on that basis, and then from there we broaden out. So it's really important in your relationships, and also in your Metta Bhavana practice, if you've got one, or if you're going to start one, this loving kindness meditation. We're trying to refine our intention, that we're not doing the Metta Bhavana, or we're not in relationship with other people so that we can get what we want and so that we can experience happiness. If we cultivate our relationships on that basis of what we want, and if we practice the Metta Bhavana on that basis, we really, really limit the potential for turning our minds sort of resolutely to something positive. We really, really limit the scope of the Metta practice. So we're seeing if we can practice for the benefit of all beings. And we're included in that, but it's not just us, it's for the benefit of all beings. So we're seeing if we can sort of expand the boundaries of our concern, expand the boundaries of metta. And when we expand those boundaries, we expand ourselves. We don't feel so tight and limited and trapped. So through that expansion of our sort of field of concern, through the expansion of metta, we experience an expansion of ourselves. We feel bigger, we feel more open. We're then more able to hold actually the ups and downs of life, and we can hold a bigger perspective. So we do benefit, but if we're doing it just solely for our own benefit, then we limit the practice. So it's a bit like a koan in a way. We do practice for other people, that brings us happiness. But if we're doing it solely from that basis, then we won't really experience sort of true freedom and true happiness. So we're seeing if we can sort of creatively orientate ourselves outwards. And in that, we sort of, we're practicing sort of re-becoming. So it's this process of re-becoming. And in each moment, we're always sort of bringing ourselves into being. So we can bring ourselves into being from a place of narrow self-concern, or we can bring ourselves into being from this sort of spiraling outwards, sort of like a creative expansion outwards beyond a sort of fixed, narrow sense of ourselves. So relationships, friendships, they are the sort of working grounds of that process. So yes, we practice the Metta Bhavana, and that's really, really important. And it's it's really vital, actually, I think, to trying to go beyond. Well, the metta takes the self-concern out of friendships, out of relationships. But we can't be meditating all the time. Probably the rest of the time we are relating to other people, we are relating to the world. So what we can do outside of meditation practice is we can just try to be a bit less selfish. It's really, really simple. We can try to look for the good qualities in others rather than looking for what they're not doing or what's wrong with them. And we can try to go out to others. And it's a really, really good practice to do something that will bring no benefit to yourself. Do something for someone else that will bring no benefit to yourself. And I did this last year. I don't know if I've done it since. I'm sure I have in small ways, but I did it really consciously last year where someone was moving out of my community, and I decided that I would, I'd help her hire a van, and I'd drive her and all her stuff to Norfolk and then drive back. So basically there was like nothing in it for me. It was purely just because I wanted to help her. I'm sure you probably do things like that all the time, but it felt like quite a big thing that there wasn't really anything in it for me. And it was really interesting. In the lead up to it, I felt loads of resistance. I was like, oh, this was such a bad idea. I'm really tired. It's the weekend. I've been working all week. I just want to rest. But then when I did it, I just felt so energized and happy. And I felt really, really, really connected. And it's just a small example of like doing something for others. There's loads and loads of ways we can do that. And it doesn't always just have to be taking action, although I think that is really, really important. It can just be in our minds, bearing other people in mind, turning our minds out into the world rather than turning them back in and in and in on ourselves. So, yes, so that's what I've got to say about relationships and about metta. So, so just in summary, the relationships in our lives, the everyday relationships, they are our opportunities to go beyond ourselves. And in that way, we can find freedom and we can find insight as well. We can sort of discover the true meaning of life actually through our friendships. And understanding and truth and love isn't some abstract concept that's to be found outside in some special place. It's right here with the people that you live with your neighbors, with the people on your street, with the person in the corner shop. It's right here, and also out in the world. Reading the news, looking at everything that's happening in the world, people that perhaps we'll never meet. We can bear them in mind. We can wish them well. We can take action for their welfare. So those are all of our opportunities to step out of our limited sense of ourselves. So, yeah, so there's going to be an opportunity. We're going to meditate now. And then after the meditation, there's going to be an opportunity for you to ask any questions. So you'll be able to do that through the chat. But first, what we'll do is we'll have a go at doing the Metta Bhavana, the loving kindness meditation. And we'll do the first stage, the second stage, and then we'll do the last stage. So the first stage is ourselves. The second stage is the good friend. And then in the last stage, we bring to mind all beings. So in that stage, you can bring in people you don't know. You can bring in people that you have difficulty with. You can bring in people near to you, people far away. You're seeing if you can start to expand that sort of reference of concern out and out, expand the boundaries of metta and expand the sense of yourself. So you get to have a go at experiencing that and seeing if you can let that sort of satellite shoot out a bit further away from yourself. Yeah. Okay, so set yourselves up for meditation. If you're at home and you're sitting on a sofa or sitting on a chair, sometimes it's quite nice to have a cushion in the small of your back just so you can sit up nice and tall and feel supported. And it's good to have if you're on a chair, it's quite nice to have your feet flat on the ground. It's also quite nice to have your hands supported, so you can bring a cushion for your hands, or you can just rest your hands on your legs. So let's just settle, and I'll lead us in the meditation practice. So when you feel ready, you can just close your eyes. And you can start by taking a few deeper breaths and letting the breath come down into the belly, the lower belly. And just letting your body really settle, so feeling the weight of your legs or your feet on the ground. And let the weight drop down through your sitting bones into the cushion or the chair. So you ground your awareness in your direct experience of your body. A sense of stability. And you can allow your spine to rise up and out of the pelvis, so you sit up tall. And it's like the crown of your head is being drawn up towards the ceiling by a golden thread. The spine's long. And you can just let your shoulders release down your back. And soften the muscles of the face Release your jaw. Just let your face soften. You don't need to hold any particular expression. And just letting the mouth and tongue relax. And let the throat soften. And start to bring the attention to the chest. And just start by feeling the breath through the chest. Notice if you're tensing up in the shoulders or if your chest feels tight. As you breathe in, just feel the natural opening that happens with the inhale. And as you breathe out, a softening and a release. And as you breathe in, you could let the breath soften your belly, so the belly's also relaxed. And just stay a while here, just feeling the breath through the body. Soft belly, soft chest. And we'll move into the Metta Bhavana practice, starting with the first stage with ourselves. And really ground the practice through the body. So this sense of well-wishing towards yourself. So we can spend our time worrying about what people think about us, or being anxious about not getting what we want. And we can just drop all that and just come into this kindly, open sense of wishing ourselves well. And when you get distracted, you can relax a little and just come back to the breath. And then back to this sense of wishing yourself well. And now we can start to broaden the field of concern. So you can bring to mind a good friend. And just choose the first person that arises in your mind. And just have a felt sense of them. Imagine them, remember them as vividly as you can. And wishing them well. And if you're finding it hard to stay connected to the practice, you could just bring to mind your friend's good qualities. And then you can start to broaden out. So expanding around yourself, your good friend, and including more people in your field of awareness. Just gently and persistently reorientating yourself out to other beings. People you know, people you don't know, people you like, people you don't like. Seeing if you can cultivate this state of mind without boundaries. If the practice becomes a bit abstract or you feel disconnected, then use the breath. Breathing in this kindly awareness, breathing out this kindly awareness. Grounding the practice through the direct experience of your body. And now you can just stay in the meditation posture, but just release all of your efforts and just sit for a few moments. And then when you're ready, you can start to bring the practice to a close. Good. Okay. So we've got a bit of time now. It's an opportunity for you to ask questions. So if you've got a question related to what I was talking about at the start, or if there's something around the metta practice that we've just done, please do ask your questions in the chat. You can just type your question in, and Max and Claudio will let me know what your questions are. So do feel free to ask any questions that you have. And I'll do my best to respond to them. I can't guarantee that I'll answer them, but I can definitely respond to them. I wonder how you got on in the meditation practice, if you had a sense of if you had a sense of that, the tightness of self-concern that I was talking about, and if you maybe got a taste of going out beyond the sense of yourself in the meditation practice. Any questions? Yeah? Okay, great.
Yeah, so Mark has said, what does Buddhism have to say about friendships, relationships, and love, and the idea of non-attachment?
Okay, is it Marcus?
Mark.
Yeah, Mark. So Mark's asking, what does Buddhism have to say about friendships, relationships, love, and the idea of non-attachment? So, like I was saying, the Buddha said that friendship was really, really important. In fact, he said that it was the whole of the spiritual path was the practice of friendship. So friendship's really, really important, and love is really, really important. Of course, it's really, really easy to, I don't know, it's easy to get attached, isn't it, to the people that we love? And the problem with that really is, the way that I experience that is that, it's really easy for it to turn sour when people don't do what I want. It can get difficult. So I guess that's where we're trying to see if we can love people really, really, really deeply, really, really wholeheartedly, and really, really fully, and also in a way be able to let them go. I guess ultimately everyone we love, we're going to have to let go of them. So we're seeing if we can really, really love people, but also not try to grasp them and hold on to them and place high expectations upon them. In a way, I'd say don't worry too much about the sort of concept of non-attachment. I think we probably need to love more. But like I was saying, we need to love really, really deeply, but see if the love can be a sort of based on a desire for that person's well-being and that person's growth, rather than getting what we want from that person or being neurotically dependent on them. And in terms of relationships, in our tradition, you can be celibate if you want, or you can be in a romantic relationship. So relationships in themselves aren't bad. It's just that in romantic relationships, particularly, that's sometimes where we can experience I can experience the highest intensity of neurotic attachment. It might not be the same for you, but I think it's the same for a lot of people. It's easy to well, in a way, just be really, really self-concerned actually in romantic relationships. So they're challenging, but they can be really, really fruitful if we use them, if we're trying to, again, just see if we can really, really be in relationship with people and have their best interests at heart. It's not easy, but it is possible. Yeah.
Oliver has said, what does Buddhism say about cutting people out of your life?
Cutting people out. Yeah, it's interesting. Someone asked this question actually the other day. I mean, I don't know what Buddhism says about cutting people out of your life. I guess my responses in a way are from my own experience. So they don't really represent the whole of the Buddhist canon or even this particular tradition. Actually, it's just, in a way, my responses are based on my own understandings, my own practice, my own study. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, the thing about cutting someone out of your life. So actually, I just wonder, it's interesting what I don't know the sort of situation that you're referring to, or if that's like a personal thing that you're doing at the moment. But my thinking around it is that you can't actually cut anyone out of your life. Actually, once you've been in relationship with someone, you'll always be in relationship with them. You can decide not to see people, maybe because it's actually ultimately harmful for you. Or harmful for them. So you can choose to be to have a particular boundary around not seeing someone. But I think you'll always be in relationship to them. You can't delete someone from your life, even when people die. They don't get cut out of our lives, do they? Sometimes when people die, they're actually more present. So I don't really think we can sort of cut people out. But we might need to. In a way, we might need to choose who we spend our time with. Who we spend time with will really deeply affect us. So we need to, in a way, be discerning about who we choose for our friends, who we choose to spend time with. But just because we are not seeing someone directly, so you might have, just because we're choosing not to see someone on a regular basis and cultivate a really deep friendship with them, it doesn't mean that we can't still cultivate an attitude of love and metta. So I get what the Buddha would say is that there's no place for hatred. Actually, no matter what happens in the world, hatred will just bring more hatred. So if we can meet all situations with love, that will set us free ultimately. It doesn't mean that we don't stand up for what we believe in and we don't set boundaries, but we're seeing if we can bring an attitude of love to everyone, actually, which is obviously really hard. Yeah.
Messiah says, does practicing metta mean we have to be nice to everyone?
That's a good question. Hi, Messia. Yeah, so Messia is asking, does practicing metta mean we have to be nice to everyone? Well, nice isn't really a great word, is it? Sort of, when I think of the word being nice, I think of, it doesn't seem very genuine. So no, I don't think practicing Buddhism means we have to be nice to everyone. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how to respond. Because I think it's really important that we don't just like cover up. We don't just have this blanket of being nice. It's really important, isn't it, to, in a way, metta isn't like putting a plaster of loving kindness over difficult emotion. So, and we don't want to be sort of fake. But what we're trying to do is see if we can have this, in a way, this attitude of friendliness and understanding to as many people as possible, whether that's in real time or in our imagination. So I don't think it means that we need to be nice. In fact, sometimes we need to have a quite honest, we need to confront things. We need to have quite honest dialogue with people. You know, in our particular tradition, we have a sort of culture of giving each other feedback where we're really honest actually about each other's shortcomings. But it doesn't come from a place of disregard or hatred. It comes from a place of love, wanting other people to grow and develop. So it doesn't mean that we have to pretend everything's okay. But what we're trying to do is operate in a mode of loving kindness to ourselves and to others. So we're not trying to like put a blanket of niceness over everything in a sort of fake way. We're trying to reach more deeply into something which is more true and see, well, I think if we see how deeply connected we are to each other, then metta will naturally flow. So we're trying to align ourselves with that principle, and just being nice in a sort of blanket way, that you won't reach those depths. And in order to reach those depths, we have to come into contact with our own hatred, our own aversion, our own wrong views, our own prejudices. We have to confront those in order to reach a deeper sense of connection. I hope that answers your question.
Kevin said, how might somebody experiencing loneliness deal with the second stage of the Metta Bhavana?
So Kevin's asking how someone experiencing loneliness can deal with the second stage of the Metta Bhavana. So you're feeling lonely. I'm wondering, I sort of want more clarification on the question in a way. I'm wondering if you can't think of a good friend to put in the second stage. Yeah, maybe you could clarify if that's the issue. In a way, we don't need to have maybe if we don't feel like we've got a good friend in our lives at the moment, we can just think of someone who's been kind to us in our lives, or we could think of someone who's helped us. It could be quite small. That will be, if you're finding it hard to find someone for the second stage, you could just jump to the third stage and you could think of someone kind. I mean, in terms of loneliness, this practice is a really good antidote to loneliness. It sort of takes us, it brings us into connection with other people. I mean, the other thing we can do if we're experiencing loneliness is we could start to cultivate friendship in our life. So if we do feel lonely and we feel like we don't have a good friend, we can start to cultivate friendship in our lives and start from a place of what we can offer, what we can give other people to experience that sense of connection.
Thanks for that. So Carla said, is it wrong to do Metta Bhavana for the sake of yourself? He said just for the sake of yourself.
Yeah.
I think he's asking a bit more about, is it selfish for us to do things partly for our own benefit?
Yeah. Is that Carl?
Carl, yeah.
Carl, yeah. So Carl's asking, is it wrong to do the Metta Bhavana just for ourselves, or things just for ourselves? No, it's not wrong, Carl. Don't worry. I mean, most things that we do them for ourselves, and that's really important. It's important to have a healthy sense of ourselves. It's important to look after ourselves. We need to do that. And particularly when we start off in the spiritual life on the Buddhist path, or maybe just in the process of self-development and growth, we are motivated by probably maybe an experience of our own suffering, maybe an experience that we want something more, we want to feel more fulfilled, we want to feel happier, we want to feel more satisfied. We might be searching for meaning and understanding. So it's not wrong, and it's a really good place to start, but it can't end there. That's what I've been trying to say, is that it's not an end point. Well, it is an end point. It can be an end point. That's fine. But I guess what the Buddha would say, or what the teachings of the Buddha are saying, is that if that's the end point, us just becoming really fulfilled, really happy in ourselves, then we're missing an opportunity for a greater sense of freedom and an opportunity to really be of benefit to others in the world, and an opportunity to really realize the meaning of our lives and the meaning of our relationships. So it's not that it's wrong. I think it's a really good starting point. And doing this Metta Bhavana practice doing the Metta Bhavana practice, cultivating friendship in your life, doing things for other people, trying to act less selfishly, all of those things help us to stop doing things just for ourselves and start thinking about us plus other people. We're not trying to ignore ourselves or ignore our needs. We're just trying to expand that out. Yeah, so that's what I've got to say about that. Okay, that's it. We're done. Okay. Okay, good. So yeah, we're coming up to time now. So thanks very much for coming, and thank you for your questions. It's really, really nice to have you joining us this evening. So the last thing that I wanted to say is I really, really wanted to encourage you to give to the London Buddhist Centre. So all of these teachings, we offer them freely. And I've come here tonight because I want to connect with you all. I want to teach about Buddhism, about the Metta Bhavana. Max and Claudia are also volunteering their time here. So the whole of the Buddhist Center runs on this culture of generosity, and it's really in the spirit of the Metta practice that we practice generosity. So we're just encouraging you to join in and to participate in that culture. So if you've got the means, we'd really, really appreciate donations. So in the chat and also in the comments underneath the YouTube video, you can click and you can donate to the Buddhist Center through our Just Giving site. So I'd really, really encourage you to do that if you feel moved to give. Do give. And it would be really, really greatly received, and it would, it would just be of benefit to lots of people. It helps us to keep giving these teachings freely, which we really, really want to do. Okay, so we'll start to round up. So thanks very much for joining us. You can check out the rest of our activities online. There's lots happening each day, and we'll be back tomorrow at the same time in the same place. So we'll sign off for now and see you again.